I'm the Deputy Director of the Swindon and Wiltshire Teaching School Hub, and I'm leading on NPQs. And we're really lucky to have Catherine Ollington from Ambition Institute with us, and she's going to talk us through the NPQ programmes with Ambition, through the curriculum and the structure of all of those fantastic and exciting new programmes. So I'm going to hand over to Catherine. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Zoe. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen and hopefully you can hear me all or hear me throughout. Can you just save questions till the end, or alternatively just post them in the chat box and we'll try to address them at the end as well. Unfortunately, while I'm presenting, I can't see everyone, so I won't see all your lovely faces, but we'll see questions at the end. As Zoe said, I'm here to talk to you today about the new NPQs, a little bit about why we have these new and reformed NPQs and their delivery. So thank you to Swindon and Wiltshire Teaching School Hub for letting me here today. And before I kick off, I'm just going to give a quick introduction to Ambition Institute for those of you who may not know us too well. We're a charitable organisation that works to support teachers and educators from every stage of their career to keep getting better, with the aim that we're focusing our support to improve outcomes for pupils across the country, but particularly supporting those from disadvantaged outcomes. And we do that through a range of training programmes, all the way from early career teacher training up to trust leaders and CEOs. And we've been really delighted to have been approved by the Department for Education yet again. So we've been running the NPQs for quite a few years, but particularly for these new and reformed national professional qualifications. So as an accredited provider, it's fantastic to be supporting the rollout of the new CPD for teachers. There's quite a few things that we're really excited about with the new and reformed NPQs, so I'll give a little bit of a talk about those, if we can go through them. So we know that the national professional qualifications have had a big role in the education system for years and years and years. They were first introduced in 1997 with the NPQH, and it was made mandatory in 2009. For all first-time head teachers, but then was made non-mandatory again in 2012. And since then, we've had a rollout of expanded national professional qualifications. And as you'll now know, we have these 6 national professional qualifications that are voluntary, and they're a suite of qualifications to support professional development at various different stages in a school. And the aim of these new and reformed national professional qualifications is not only to equip teachers with the expertise they need to fulfil their role, but also to give them the tools to lead sustainable and ongoing improvement across their schools, ultimately with the goal of improving outcomes for pupils. And we know that CPD for teachers is a really worthwhile thing to invest in the sense that it's been proven to have 3 times more impact than any other school-based factor when improving pupil outcomes. So that's something we're really campaigning at Ambition Institute. Some of the things that we're really excited about with the new and reformed NPQs is the way they've changed the framework. So all of the qualifications that we're offering with Swindon and Wiltshire Teaching School Hub are really carefully mapped against the Department for Education's framework. And that means that at the end of the national professional qualifications, participants receive their qualification after an assessment, but they're also learning an awful lot of critical tools to support them. Some of these changes include, particularly for the leadership frameworks, far more specific and focused approach and guidance for leadership. So historically, the leadership frameworks talked an awful lot about the generic characteristics of a leader. So, for example, there might be statements within the framework about be an inspiring leader in a range of situations, or there might be statements such as motivate and unite a wide range of people around visionary or challenging goals. So they're quite vague and high-level words, and they're not really relevant necessarily to school leadership. So instead, these new frameworks are far more specific to the education sector, and instead we now have statements such as recognise the complexity in managing parallel improvement projects within a school. So far more focused and relevant to the education sector. Similarly, what we're excited about with the new and reformed frameworks is there's far more consistency within them. And that's been really valuable for schools who are working and embarking not only with the early career teacher training programme, but now enrolling participants onto national professional qualifications. All of their staff now are using the same language, and there's a golden thread throughout the school and at every stage of a teacher's career. And that's really valuable, not just in terms of giving those teachers the right tools, but for a whole school approach to CPD. And finally, one thing we're also really excited about with the reformed leadership frameworks and the specialist ones is there's a really strong evidence base underpinning the frameworks. These frameworks have been put together by a variety of people within the education sector who are working in schools, working in trusts, work in education research, and then they've not only gone through development with all of these people, but they've been reviewed by the Education Endowment Foundation and been approved by them. So with regards to what the new and reformed NPQs look like, there's 6 altogether. We have the NPQ for leading teaching, NPQ for leading behaviour and culture, and the NPQ for leading teacher development. And then the reformed leadership NPQs are the senior leadership, the NPQ for senior leadership, NPQ for headship, and the NPQ for executive leadership. One thing I will add here is to support those on the NPQ for headship or those early head teachers, we also have an additional support offer, which all providers are also rolling out, and as part of effectively designed to coincide with the NPQ for headship and support it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how the programme is delivered and what it looks like or what to expect from those doing national professional qualifications. I'm going to kick off with the specialist NPQs. They're all delivered very similarly, but of course the content massively varies. The specialist NPQs are all 12 months, and the programme kicks off with a 2-week induction. So we have an upcoming deadline for the first cohort this year, which is October, and the programme will kick off with that 2-week induction. Throughout that 2-week induction, it will require 2 hours of work to completed during that period, and that will be self-study, so asynchronous, and is part of the onboarding programme. Once the induction has happened, we'll then have 6 half-termly courses, and I'll talk a little bit about what's involved in those courses soon. But to launch the year for the National Professional Qualification, there'll be a conference. Now, sometimes those can be delivered in different ways. So Zoe and Daniel, please do just chip in if there's anything you want to clarify, or we can go back to those at the end. But we'll typically kick off with the conference. Once that conference has kind of effectively launched and set the scene for the rest of the year, we'll move into each of those 6-week courses. Each programme or course ends with a each programme ends with a clinic that is focused on the assessment and helps to prepare participants for the 2-hour assessment clinic they'll have at the very end. And then in between, there's also 1-hour webinar sessions, 1-hour community sessions to support networking and the opportunity for participants to learn from one another. And at the very end, we have a 3-month formative assessment as well. And this is the opportunity where participants will take what they've learned and apply it to get their accredited qualification. The 2-hour assessment can take place anywhere across a 3-month assessment window. So the reason behind that is this structure is to prevent plagiarism. If we had everyone doing it at once, it would be incredibly challenging to ensure that there's nothing happening while people are doing an assessment from home rather than in a big venue. So over the 3 months, participants will be randomly invited to sit an 8-day window. It will be an open book style assessment where they will read a 2,000 word case study and respond to it in a minimum of 1,500 words. Overall, in terms of that 12-month course for specialist NPQs, the capacity that will be required will be roughly around 52 hours over the course of the year. And as I said, with this 6-week course, we break the whole programme down into week-by-week digestible chunks. That time then means that the participants only need around 50 minutes per week to complete their NPQ. So far more digestible and should hopefully fit within the average school week. Again, I'll talk a little bit about what that week by week looks like in a moment. One final thing that I will add with regards to capacity, as part of these accredited qualifications, there's a minimum number of hours that should be delivered in person and face-to-face, and these are set by the Department for Education. The number of hours for a specialist NPQ is 8 hours. Typically, we would have delivered those as part of the 6-hour conference and then made up via the 1-hour community sessions or clinic sessions, which don't appear here. And I'll talk about those in a moment, but and with this year, we're going to be delivering the 6-hour conference virtually. I believe that we've got confirmation from the Department for Education that this time it can count towards face-to-face hours. So we're able to kind of help prevent unnecessary travel outside of school as well, which is again a real positive for the programme and the way that it's being delivered. Moving on to the leadership NPQs, so they're longer than the specialist NPQs, they're 18 months instead of 12, and that means that we've got 9 half-termly courses instead of 6, with, again, the same way with these programmes, they're kicked off with a 2-week induction. So again, there'll be 2 weeks for participants to complete their onboarding and prepare and set the scene for the remainder of the qualification. Once they've completed their onboarding, they'll be invited to another 6-hour conference, and then we'll finally kick off the course. With these sessions, again, you'll have 1-hour community sessions in between, and because it's a year and a half, the leadership NPQs will have a second conference at the midway point. Finally, when we get to the 3-month assessment period window, the assessment is delivered in the same way, that it will be that assessment window where participants are randomly invited to go and complete a written case response to a case study. One thing I'll also, and similarly, sorry, just to add, there is additional support again to help prepare for the assessment. With regards to the assessments, these are pass-fail, and those that fail the first time round can be invited to repeat the assessment in the following cohort, which is roughly around 6 months later. Finally, the other thing that I will add here is for the NPQ for executive leaders, there are additional 2-hour coaching sessions to support these programmes and to support the participants in their role. Right. One final thing that I will add is we're missing some clinic sessions on these maps. So throughout the whole programme, both for the leadership NPQs and for the specialist NPQs, there are clinic sessions which are the opportunities for participants to come together and review a case study and discuss with a visiting fellow who will help facilitate that session. This gives the opportunity to ensure that participants are fully understanding what they're reading through each module, and also the opportunity to think through these various different scenarios and how they can apply what they've learned. I'll be talking a little bit about the clinic sessions in one of the later slides. So all in all, for the leadership national professional qualifications, the hourly requirements for these will be around 75 to 77 hours. They cover over 18 months, but again, that is broken down into really digestible 50-minute week by week bite-sized chunks. And with regards to the Department for Education's number of hours in person, it's expected to be 12 hours in person. And again, these will be covered by the 6-hour conference, and then later on down the line, these clinic sessions that I've mentioned. So within each 6-week course for each module, as I said, the course is broken down into accessible bite-sized chunks. We have week by week, we'll kick off with an insight module, followed by an application module, followed by an insight module and an application module, and so on until the course ends. But in addition to this, supporting the 6-week course, as I mentioned, there'll be a 2-hour clinic. So these facilitated sessions to support the understanding of the module. So with regards to what the insight and applications look like and what they involve, the reason why we structured it into this kind of far more digestible bite-sized chunks is we know that the little and often approach works quite well. It allows participants to get into a habit and to commit to the work that they're doing. It's far more accessible to do a course in this sort of structure rather than have all the information thrown at you in one go. And it also allows for repetition to help embed some of the learning that's taking place. So within the modules as well, there'll be some of the framework will be revisited to help embed the learning. So for instance, with regard to the insight module and what it looks like, the insight module will be kicked off with a primer, which lasts around 20 to 25 minutes. This is the opportunity where the module is introduced. There might be a question that the participants are looking to answer, or a little bit of reading to help them understand the concept that they're going to be studying. Following that, there'll be an example, which will help them to understand and see what they're studying in action. So an example can include a video of someone chairing a meeting. It might be a paper-based document, such as a school policy. And then after that, they'll go into the review stage, and this is an opportunity to consolidate what has been learnt through quiz questions or reflective prompts. The following week, that participant will start their application module, and it will last roughly the same amount of time. The application module is broken down into diagnosis, where participants review the previous actions they may have set for themselves in earlier modules or earlier weeks, and what they want to focus on for this application week. They'll then start to model what they're looking at and continue to analyse the features of what they're learning and how it can begin to apply to their own context before they move into the application stage, where participants have a go at doing the thing that they have seen modelled. So, for example, they might have time to prepare a script. They might be working with a buddy, so a peer on the programme, and receive feedback and practice to support, again, their understanding of the concept and how it can fit within their own context or scenario. There'll also be supporting videos to help them kind of practice what they're learning effectively. Some of this can vary depending on the framework or the NPQ that they're doing. Finally, at the end of the application module, there'll be time for actions where participants will agree what they will take forward into this and how they're going to hold themselves and their buddy, so the peer on their course with them, to account. And I'm just going to take the time to introduce you all to Step Lab. So some of you, if you've been on any of our programmes before, may be already familiar with Step Lab. Others, this might be a little bit new to you. Step Lab is the app that we're delighted to kind of introduce and use to help deliver the programmes that we have at Ambition Institute. So we've been using it for the Early Career Teacher Training Programme, we've used it for a number of other programmes, and we're using it for the National Professional Qualifications. You can have the app on your phone, or participants can access via their desktop, laptop or computer. They don't need to download anything onto the computer. And what it does is it means that the participants can access all the materials easily in that week by week structure. And they can see what they need to read. They might have a look at their progress throughout. There might be some relevant videos or the examples for them to look at, questions to help them embed their learning. Sometimes they're able to download the PDF version as well to access it all in these different options. So that's what the week by week self-study looks like. Outside of that self-study, as I mentioned, we have these clinic sessions where participants will be invited to join these virtual sessions and to look through a various case study. As a facilitated session, these clinic sessions start with an introduction where facilitators will set expectations. They'll introduce ideas and again check participants' understanding, support participants as they make sense of the ideas being presented in the session and steer them in the right direction for anything that's been misunderstood. Then there'll be a review of the case study where participants will have the time to read through a case study independently. They'll then be able to answer prompt questions and prepare for a group analysis of the information. And they'll have the opportunity to consider a specific element of the case study. And again, really think about how it relates to their own context, because that's something that's, again, obviously really important with the NPQs, that we need the participants to keep thinking how they're going to apply what's being learned into the context of their own school. And finally, we move into case study analysis during these clinic sessions. This is when the facilitators will lead a discussion to provide formative feedback to participants, and this will support and challenge their understanding. The idea is that this is all supportive preparation for the formative assessment and to help ensure that all of these participants are able to pass their assessment at the end. To close, the facilitator will summarise the discussion and provide any relevant feedback to the group and share next steps for learning. Now here it says clinic and communities, and I mentioned communities in those diagrams earlier on. So community sessions are slightly different from clinic sessions. They're 1 hour instead of 2, and they're underpinned by a protocol that's been designed to support kind of networking through flexibly organised groups. The Swindon and Wiltshire will be organising these along with the programme that they're delivering, but the idea to support networking in your local area and encourage your participants to meet and engage with similar peers in their context and to learn from one another. Right, so moving on to the assessment window or period. As I mentioned, it's 3 months that the window will open, and there'll be an 8-day window to complete the open book style of assessment. So let's say the window opens on a Monday and throughout the week the participant just doesn't have the time to complete the assessment for whatever reasons due to earlier commitments. They'll have that full week to find 2 hours to complete that assessment. The participant will read a 2,000-word case study and respond to the case study in 1,500 words. And as I mentioned, it's pass or fail. So participants will move to the next window if they fail the assessment. Moving on to content coverage, I'm not going to go into the details of all of the content for all the NPQs, otherwise we'll be here for another few hours. So this is just to give you a little bit of an insight of how these new frameworks are structured. They're all publicly available on the Department for Education's website. You can go away and have a look at them. That is something we recommend for all participants, is they should really go and read the frameworks before they begin their application to ensure they understand what to expect from the course and make sure that it's right for them. But typically they're structured in the idea that you have these statements of what participants should learn, and then they'll think about how it then applies within the context of their own setting. And that's how we have the insight and the application modules. So they learn the concept and then learn how they could apply it or see it within a school with the examples that we have on the way. There is a lot of content to cover, and the content really can vary. So, for example, if you were to go away and read the frameworks today, be cautious that the executive leadership framework is 28 pages long. The behaviour and culture framework is 12 pages. So all of these different programmes have different levels of breadth and depth, depending on the content that's being covered. Finally, just going back to the content, they're similarly mapped closely with the teacher standards. again, with the idea that there's that golden thread going through CPD, and it's all working towards what teachers need in their toolkit to help raise pupil standards and outcomes. So you can just see here how the teacher standards are being mapped with the NPQ for leading teaching, the NPQ for leading behaviour and culture, and leading teacher development. And even then it starts with the new early career framework. So through each stage of a teacher's career, teachers will make sure that they're covering all of the teacher standards and keep building their knowledge and expertise to the next level. Similarly, the leadership NPQs are mapped to the head teacher standards. So the NPQ SL, NPQH and NPQ EL are all mapped in this way. Looking at what the programme journeys look like, this is just an introduction to the modules for each of the courses. So the NPQ for leading teaching will kick off with culture and learning before moving into assessment, instruction, subject and curriculum, adapting teaching, professional development and implementation. Again, you can see these for each of the different NPQs. I'll pause and let you have a look at these slides in a moment, and there will be a copy available. One thing I will just cover is the leadership NPQs all follow the same modules, with the idea that for each stage of the leadership, those participants are building and building and building up on their knowledge and their expertise to support the role that they're in as they move up with their leadership into new leadership roles. One thing I will say about the NPQ for executive leadership is it's very much focused on school improvement and multiple school support. It's an education focused NPQ alongside the rest of them. So if you are thinking about doing the executive leadership NPQ, always have a chat as well to make sure it's right for you and fits the role that you have. So I'm just going to pause and let people have a quick look at these modules and what's covered. Okay, and I'm just going to move on again, just to give you an indication of the content and what's covered within it. Here you can see a breakdown of each of those modules for the leading teacher development and the indicative content that will be covered, and the various areas of focus. So this is just obviously a very high level overview of what's covered. The other thing that I will say, within the back of each of the frameworks, you can see all the research and the notes that have gone into the development of each of these frameworks. And of course, this then applies to the content of what the participants are learning. So you can go and have a look at those and read some of the kind of most recent research that's gone into the leading teacher development programme and what is being thought of as best practice there. So just to sort of wrap up, thinking about why working with Ambition Institute and Swindon and Wiltshire Teaching School Hub, one of the things that we are really excited about is, of course, that these national professional qualifications helps to meet our own mission and track record. So being able to continue to provide that support for teachers at every stage of their career and to help keep improving schools to ultimately achieve positive pupil outcomes. Around that, we have this kind of highly flexible approach where we've got the week by week breakdown, which should fit within the school's timetable, and that's for self-study as well. So those staff members can find their time within the school week to fit the NPQ within their school timetable. We worked really hard to develop the content that we have for the national professional qualifications, and they've been signed off by the Department for Education through each stage. Of course, we've delivered these before, so we've been really confident to adapt what we've been delivering to the new and reformed frameworks. As I mentioned, Step Lab is something that we love to shout about as an app that really helps the participants on the other end to have access to all the information they need and to work through their qualifications. And yeah, I think that's everything covered. Right, so I'm going to stop there and stop sharing my screen for a moment, see if there's any questions or if people are still on screen. And I'll also let Danielle and Zoe kind of add in anything that they want from there as well about delivery in Swindon and Wiltshire.
Thank you so much, Catherine. That was really informative. I've just put the link in the chat for anybody that wishes to sign up. And on there, you'll notice that there's a declaration really to say that you've spoken with your head teacher, if you're not the head teacher, regarding signing up to any of the programmes. And then we will pass on your details to Ambition to get you completely signed up in preparation for the programmes to start in November. Zoe, have I missed anything?
No, I think just to say the application process, as soon as we've received those nominations, we will register those with Ambition, and those participants will receive a link to complete an application, and they need to do that as soon as possible, really. And we'd like all those applications sort of in, and then they'll be reviewed and sort of before the end of September, really. So that's given us a couple of weeks, maybe just into early October. Once accepted, participants will then receive a further email where they need to accept their place on the course, and we will email out further instructions and information on this, but they won't be registered on the course until they've accepted their place on that final email. So I'll just post a photo into the chat because I was just trying to share, but I'm having problems with my internet, so hopefully this will go into the chat just with some sort of idea of the timeline.
Zoe, Laura is asking for details of the different costings and oh, you've done it. Great.
That's the application process. The costings, if you're a Pupil Premium 30 school, all of the courses are free. If you're not, the specialist NPQ in leading teacher development is funded, whereas the others are not. But I will send the costings out. Actually, I might be able to just pop those in now as well. Yeah, I can do. Okay, let's see if it will paste in. Okay, so there's some of the fees there. The NPQH has a fee, and that's £1,980. I'd like to just also add that the NPQs will be facilitated across the Swindon and Wiltshire Teaching School Hub, with lots of the sessions taking place in Swindon and sort of other surrounding areas. And said the first conference will be virtual, and that will count towards the face-to-face time, and then following that the clinics will also be virtual. So if there's anyone got any further questions? Thank you, Catherine, for posting the frameworks there. Danielle, you've posted the form into the chat, so really it's just getting those nominations in as soon as possible. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I've got a question. You mentioned something about a pupil premium sort of factor, being able to be funded. What criteria do we need to meet to be a pupil premium school?
It's the top 30% for pupil premium in England and Wales. I think we have a list, so if you can give us the name of your school, we can check for you if you're
okay. Should I just pop that in the chat?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, no worries.
Fantastic, and we can check that for you. See if I can do that.
I mean, our pupil premium percentage is roughly 45 to 50%, give or take, depending on what week of the year it is. A lot of turbulence.
I'm just going to have a look for you now.
I've just seen that Andy's asked a question about which course is nearest to the old NPQML. I think that for those members of staff who would have been considering the NPQMLs, I'd suggest that they look at the specialist NPQs and try and identify which ones kind of suit their interests, but also have a think about where your school's gaps might be. And if you want to kind of upscale any of your staff to support your school in that area. Maybe have a look at the NPQ-SL, so the senior leadership, for those kind of quite top members of staff who you do really think are on the pathway to leadership roles.
So St Martin's is on that list, Zoe.
Oh, great, thanks.
Which is great news.
Yeah.
So that's 3 NPQs for, is there a limit?
Well, at the moment, we haven't been told that there is. I suppose depending on numbers, we'll have to look at our own cluster sizes across the teaching school hub. But numbers, I think people are still quite slow to sign up at the moment. So get the nominations in and you should be fine. OK, sounds promising.
Fantastic.
If you have any questions, get in contact, please, just so we can kind of support you with that process.
OK, thank you.
My email into the chat.
Any other questions? Great. Well, thanks for your time this afternoon. You know where we are if you do need anything. Look forward to receiving your nominations. Thank you, Catherine, for your time as well. Really appreciate it.
All right, lovely to speak with you all.